A being so far above everything earthly, while he was such a base earthly being, that it was even unthinkable for others, or for Kitty herself, to acknowledge him as worthy of her. This is an excerpt taken from what, in my opinion, is the greatest novel ever written, certainly the greatest work of fiction I've ever encountered, namely Anna Karenina, written by the inimitable Leo Tolstoy. It's worth noting that Tolstoy only wrote in Russian, and so this is lifted from the Richard Pevere Larissa Volokonsky translation, which in my opinion, again, is the most vivid. And why do I bring this up? Some of us, bestowed by fortune's good grace, I think are able not only to fall in love, but also in that rarest of light, to capture the moment when the earth shifts. It's typically delicate, it's often imperceptible, hence it's missed by most, but if spirited by luck and blessed by circumstance, we catch it. This passage for me represents one such moment. That is to say, unequivocally, it's the exact point in time at which I fell in love with language. Now, by way of context, I'd grown up, fortunately so, in a house replete with books, abetted by a father who loved reading. I guess you could say that there was an inevitability to my being a voracious reader, with an unsatiated appetite for stories. I mean, I read everything, though I think I was particularly taken by all things mythological, Greek specifically. However, I think there's a difference between love of narrative and love of language. But in reading Anna Karenina the first time, the resplendence, the benevolence, the nuance of Tolstoy's language is deeply moving, but also paradoxical in as much as it's both ethereal and existential. I saw life anew, characterized, shaped and colored through a new lens, and not just because I, in part, identify with aspects of Levin, a central character, a man who I would describe as being equidistant of the bright lights of cosmopolitan St. Petersburg and a quieter, simpler charm, the quiescence of a country bucolic life. A man struggling to reconcile both, and I think compounded, of course, by the being caught, certainly initially so, in the throes of an unrequited love. I mean, the poor man really had the deck stacked against him. Interestingly, and I'm digressing here, but he's often seen as a proxy for Tolstoy himself. Alas, plainly because for the first time, I think I understood what language actually is. It's breathable art. I inhaled it, I imbibed it, and certainly, I'd say beneficially so, have not been the same ever since. My name is James Leon, and this is Behind the Words. Anybody, if willing, can regurgitate words on camera, can provide an audience with interesting, colourful, esoteric vocabulary. But I think you, the viewer, in an epoch where, despite saturation and stridence to the contrary, many are beginning, thankfully so, to shift towards something that's more sophisticated and complex. As such, you deserve more. I think you deserve to know the ethos of this, the purpose, the raison d'etre, the why behind the words. Now, judge the substance, the execution, the style, as you might, such is your right and prerogative to do so, but the authenticity should be beyond reproach, the mission clarion. You know, someone recently asked me why I'm doing this, why I'm fixated on this idea of talking better. And as a side note, to all of those who've been kind enough to message me to suggest that it should be speak better, sure. However, I think I'm attempting to eschew the formality of speak and engender something that's perhaps more conversational and inclusive, hence talk. Notwithstanding, though, more importantly, no right or wrong way necessarily, just a preference. And therein lies the beauty. I'd also like to take this opportunity to refute the idea that I'm an AI. Let's just clear that up. Certainly nothing artificial here. Perhaps some modicum of an intelligence, but I'll leave that up to you. Alas, my answer to that question, why am I doing this? Words can start wars, but they can also end them. Truth be told, that reason had never come to mind, certainly not that version. It was an extemporaneous reply, purely so. And please excuse any unwitting hubris here, but I find increasingly profound the more I think about it. Again, for context, I'm currently reading Madam Secretary, the memoirs of the first female Secretary of State of the United States, the late Madeleine Albright. And I'll digress once more, because if restoration of faith in the American dream and its audacity is required, moreover, if anyone needs reminding of the pertinence of diplomacy, then I highly recommend this memoir. One which, amongst other things, distinguishes itself because I think it offers a human insight into the politics versus a wonkish rationalization, pontification even, of the policy, which tends to be the lingua franca of many a political memoir. But perhaps it's the subconscious effect of the book that influenced my response, a mind awash, if you will. And whilst I agree with Frederick the Great of Prussia, who once famously said that diplomacy without arms is like music without instruments, lest we not be indoctrinated by shrill agenda or otherwise to ignore the potency, the proficiency, but also the pestilence of words. Words matter. Sentences matter. Dialogue matters, be it artistic consideration or political consequence. What we say, moreover how we say it, matters. So if you're wondering why I'm doing this, hopefully therein lies a tincture of an answer. And I would say this, let not the gravitational pull of fear, the machinations of partisanship, the reductionism by way of what is loudest and popular, and whatever other pernicious ideas or practices there are, make us forget or negate what are the building blocks of our humanity. The tools by which we bridge gaps, deepen knowledge, how we empower communal bonds and celebrate idiosyncrasies, debate, not debase, our differences, how we chart our history, extol our creative virtues, the prose of civilizations, the poetry of being civilized, the oxygen by which we summon our better angels. So expect to hear from me from time to time. Hopefully you'll find it interesting, informative perhaps, but certainly you'll receive authenticity on all things. I began with a quote. Indulge me as I end in a similar fashion. And this is taken from a novel that's often juxtaposed with Anna Karenina. In Madame Bovary, Gustave Flaubert says, our use of language is like a cracked kettle on which we bang out tunes for bears to dance to, while all the time we need to move the very stars to pity. He's right. Perhaps there are limits to language, barriers, horizons. But I would suggest, within the tortured yardage between the limits of what we say and the infinity of how we feel, there's redolence to be found in the tools of our discomfort. So our language might be the ailment, it's also the cure. Motivation, perhaps, for all of us, if compelled, to talk better.